Hello everybody and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. Today we talk to Sophie Krantz, who is an amazing person and has an amazing backstory that you'll hear shortly. But we talked about when you expand your worldview, you open up a world of possibility. Sophie has worked all over the world, including for the UN, and has talked to us today about how to not only expand your worldview, but also how to expand your business into the world and to find the best talent. It's an amazing conversation. It's incredibly interesting, and I hope you enjoy it and have a magical week. Hello everybody and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. This week we have a great guest on and we'll get to them shortly. But first, let's check in with the regular team and see how they're doing this week. We've got some different locations for one of them, so we'll end with them. We'll keep everybody in suspense who might be watching this podcast. So let's start with Grahame. Grahame, how's your week been this week?
I've had a good week, Jess. I got to spend time in a classroom with human beings. 3 days in a row. Fantastic. And I don't know, amazingly, it turned out that they all had exactly the same sense of humour that I had. Terrible. But it was good. And now I'm home again. You know, the sun's shining, the birds are singing, the grass is doing what grass does. So it's been a really good week.
That is great to hear. It's always good to hear when you guys get to go in the real classroom and, do that stuff. So that's awesome. Love to hear it. Danette, I might throw to you now. How's your week been?
Jez, my week's been awesome. I was in Canberra on Monday evening and Tuesday and then came home, and I've been home all the rest of the week, which is pretty extraordinary, and a whole other week to come being at home. And super exciting, the girls, my chickens, between when we left last week and were away, because we spoke on Friday, on Sunday, I got to check, they'd laid 6 eggs, and this week they've laid another 3 eggs.
That is awesome. That's great. That's amazing. And I'm sure that people can see that on social media. We've been keeping people abreast of the situation, as it were. So that's
a terrible pun, Jez.
They can go check out exactly what they've been up to. Let's throw over to Al now. Al, first of all, where are you? And second of all, how's your week been?
I'm down near the Kulin Airport today, which I'm realising I found a nice spot under a quiet tree, but about every 5 minutes a plane goes over, so you'll probably hear that in the background. But yeah, following our podcast last week, I decided to take things to an extreme on the easy side or the good side. Unlike Grahame suggested of an hour in the ice bath, I went for an hour in the hot pool and realised there is a limit on how long you can sit in the hot pool, and there is a limit on how much ice cream somebody can eat as well.
Well, look, that's a good limit to find, Al. That sounds like a fun day.
It was, yes. I will work those limits.
Al, were you eating the ice cream in the hot pool?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that, Grahame. That could have balanced things a little.
Oh no, Grandpa, what have you done? Stay tuned, folks. Next week.
That's it. Next week, the adventures of Al. Well, thanks for joining us. And Al, just also, I feel like we should iterate for people that aren't looking at the thing. You're in a car right now. Are you? Are you driving somewhere, or are you just?
No, I've got an appointment here following this, and made the opportunity to do the drive beforehand and get outside and do something a little different.
Beautiful, and it's a beautiful recording booth you got there as well. It looks great on camera, so it's happy to have you in there.
Oh, thanks, Jez.
No worries. And Sophie, how's your week been?
It's been really, really wonderful. Thank you. For the first time since 2019, we've had family over from Europe. So it's been, really, really lovely. I love technology. I love that Alan can join us from, the wonderful place he is. But there is nothing quite like catching up with family in person, is there? So it was great. Thank you.
That is amazing. And Sophie, thanks so much for being on the Magical Learning Podcast this week. We're so excited to have you. Now, I was thinking, for people that may be being introduced to you for the first time, do you want to tell people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I am from Melbourne, and I grew up here never really going anywhere. But in my mind, I was traveling the world a lot. And so my dream was to have a career getting out into the world. And so what did I do? I studied international economics and then wound up having a career managing business projects in about 25 countries. I've spent some time at the UN in Geneva, working in international economic development, working for big businesses, small businesses, all different sorts of businesses around the world and governments. And here I am now back in Melbourne and doing the work I love from here, but doing it all over the world. And so really delighted to be Zooming in with you today.
And that's amazing. And what a great journey, which I think tees us perfectly up for the topic that you've picked today, which is when you expand your worldview, you open up a world of possibility, which I thought was an amazing topic because it's both related to sort of business, but it's also just a internal sort of point of view. So would you be able to tell us a little bit about how you came up with this topic?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll go back a little bit in time. A close friend, Natalie Collard, reminded me this week that when I think I was about 10, I found in the classifieds of the Herald Sun a little ad for pen pals. And I sent away for pen pals and I had about 35 of them. So I was spending all of my pocket money on postage, international postage. It wasn't as expensive as it is now, but I had, 35 people around the world that I wrote to, and it was an obsession. Almost every day of the week, there was sometimes it was beautiful, certainly from Japan, it was beautiful, a little envelope that came with a stamp with some story of the place. And then inside there was different handwriting and there were stories of people my age and what they were doing, how they were living, what they were learning from different places. And it really sparked interest in the world because we weren't a family that traveled. We didn't really have all that, strong sort of connections at the time overseas with family and so on. But I wondered about the world. And so that's how I made sense of the world. And that's just sort of stayed the pen pals, now of course we have internet and so on, but it's expanding your worldview and making the world what you want it to through your people-to-people connections has definitely stayed as a core pillar of what I do and who I am.
Wow, that's amazing. What a great backstory as well. And now I just have to ask, did you keep in touch with any of the pen pals, or was that something more for when you were a kid? How did that go?
There is one who, Sandy from Birmingham, we met up in the UK and we're in touch every now and then. So yeah, that has lasted, which is really fun.
That's amazing. Wow, what a good story. Well, Sophie, we're so happy to have you on. What a great topic. And I think it's probably time to just jump straight in. So I might start with Danette. Danette, what was your question? And tell us a bit about why you chose it.
Thanks, Jez and Sophie. I'm so excited about this. So my question is, what are some of the ways that you can expand your worldview? Because I reckon there's going to be some listeners who are like, how to do this, but I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I really thought for this now because of technology. Of course we can the technology allows us to go pretty much anywhere in the world. So we're living in this very connected world. There are 5 billion active internet users. And so we are living in this connected world, but it can still feel like a hard thing to do. How do you expand your worldview? And a nice place to start, I think, is to try and shift the focus. And a wonderful inspirational person who I've had the good fortune of listening to a couple of times is an astronaut from Grahame. And he talks about the first time he saw Earth from the International Space Station, and he was struck by the beauty of our home. But he was also struck by the possibilities that exist when we see our planet as one planet and one people. And so, yes, we're a connected world, but it can feel really, really disconnected at the moment. So, we can't all, of course, go to space, but I think there's real power in exploring what is this connected world and what does it mean for you? And so for business people, it's really to look at, well, what is the world to you? And so, we, of course, whether we work in a company, whether we have our own business, we're doing something in the world. And we're probably not doing it entirely by ourselves, unless we're possibly in North Korea, but then we probably won't be in business, will we? So, what is the world? And it's having that sense of curiosity. And so looking at, of course, what are you doing? What are you making and selling? But where is this problem? Where do you solve it? But where does that problem exist in the world? Because problems that exist in one part of the world may well exist in other parts of the world. Where's your market? Where is it today? But where could it be? And can you find where that market is? You know, who are your competitors? They're typically not next door or down the road anymore. Where are they? Where are emerging competitors? Where's top talent? Top talent may well exist where you are, but top talent can be in, you know, so many corners of the world. And do you know who they are? And are they on your radar? What technologies and trends are emerging? They may well not be from here. In Australia, of course, where we are at the moment, there are so many technology and trends that influence how we work, and also what regulations are being set. So it's essentially anything that can help or hinder you. And that question of what are we going to harness to make sure that we're seeing the world of possibility, but there's also a risk mitigation piece in there too.
And I muted myself, so probably I was taking great notes there. I love that bit about the harness, and also the fact that you brought that risk mitigation in there, because, you know, sometimes people go, oh yeah, this is amazing, and then they get into it and it's not so great. So yeah, love that. Awesome question. Sorry, awesome answer. Thanks, Sophie.
Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. I love that. I also took down some notes there. Now, Grahame, I noticed I didn't have a question from you in here, but do you have a question?
I have so many, Jess.
Great.
Not the least of which, what's a really good question for me to ask? So I was, Sophie, how do we introduce this? I appropriately stalked you online this morning when I had to spare 10 minutes. So apologies for not having a question for you, but I'm really curious about the one of the lines on your website was talking about you know, as we all become more successful, and then we literally create a better world. And I was sort of thinking of, yeah, but how do we stay connected along the way? Yeah, as you said before, so technology makes connecting with others incredibly easy from an efficiency perspective. And I guess part of this question comes back from my experience of actually being able to work with people in person during the week. So I was just curious about your thoughts on how we expand, you know, how we get our head up, expand our vision, look at other possibilities out there in the world, and at the same time, how do we use technology to actually reconnect with other human beings better than we currently do?
Yeah, great. Yeah, good question, Grahame. So,
I was worried for a minute.
So something that I find often with people that I'm working with, it all starts with a sense that there's something else out there. And there's also this sense that maybe the narrative in the news and the negative narrative in the political domain and so on isn't it. And sometimes, not for everyone, but for some people, they feel as though the world where they live is somewhat limiting. And that's not to say that you stop working in the physical world and you only work in the virtual world, but it's to say that maybe your tribe or part of your tribe isn't necessarily where you are. And I think that, you know, so in Melbourne, for example, we had, you know, quite a long drawn out lockdown. And I know lots of people here felt really disconnected because they couldn't connect with the people in their physical world because of course we were so constrained. I felt super lucky because I'm a part of a couple of global communities, and every day I was getting out into the world. And thank goodness the technology enabled that. And, you know, tribe, we like the word or we don't like the word. I don't mind the word. I felt like I was able to connect with my tribe. I felt connected. My worldview continued to be expanded. And this ability to make our world through our people-to-people interactions, I think is so important. I was lecturing at a university in Beijing, remotely, of course, during the pandemic. And I was told afterwards, that was great, but we can't do this again unless there's a change in the national, you know, the leadership in Australia. And that's the reality of the world we're living in.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to deal with that. but to say, but I love working with you and they loved working with me. And the key was maintaining that relationship. And so when borders do open up, we can get together, or when political changes, they will continue to change. It's those people-to-people interactions that are really important, and connecting with people that you do your best work with, where you're creating what you want to see in the world instead of just maybe correcting or playing a small game. I think that's super important. Also, I work with a lot of startups in Australia, and there's there are some that are, the feedback they get in Australia is they're too ambitious, that they need to tone down their aspiration. And my response is, you need to find the right people. They're not here. So get out and let's find the right people for you. So go with that sense of what do you need in the world, and get out there and find it. Don't be held back. And if you're not held back, power to you. That's amazing.
Love it. Thank you. And also, Danette and I are big fans of Tribe.
Great.
And like you, I think a big part of our tribe doesn't live in Australia.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for that, Sophie. Great answer and great examples there. I think John and I have quite a similar question. So maybe I'll just ask John's question, which is, people get very stuck in the here and now and their immediate environment. How can we get people to lift their head and see there's so much more within them and out there? And mine was, I guess, what is difficult about expanding your worldview, which I think are kind of similar-ish, but feel free to take either one.
Yeah, great. So I do think that there is this tendency to stick with what we know, particularly if we're a little older and wiser. You know, when we're young, we're using technology and it's probably just something we take for granted if we're younger, that the people we're connected with on social media, it's probably going to be global. But for those of us that are a little older and wiser, there probably is this tendency to stick with what we know. And what can be difficult about it is to focus on process challenges. So I was working with an English-speaking team during the pandemic. Of course, no international travel allowed, but we did have a couple of team members in China. And communication was challenging at time, and the technology absolutely let us down, like on many, many levels. But if we focus on the process, we don't produce amazing results. But if we focus on the opportunity, so team, here we are, we get to engage with one of the world's most important markets when it's off limits. And what we're able to do with a non-negotiable of leaving no one behind, we were able to identify a solution for the Chinese market and develop and validate a new business model. And so we had to work hard, but I said to the team, you are so fortunate. You're one of probably the only teams globally that is able to build international leadership capability right now. And once you've developed that muscle, it's yours forever. So hard, okay, but let's focus on the outcome. Why are we doing this? Why does it matter? And let's focus on why we need to do it. And let's use the technology when it can help us, and when it hinders us, let's keep going with the knowledge that actually the technology is improving. It's accelerating rapidly. So it certainly will catch up. And there's also a quote that I love by Oliver Wendell Holmes: a mind that is stretched by new experience can never go back to its old dimensions. And so expand your worldview and then see how you go. And that can be hard as well, because when you have different views of the world, again, you might find that your tribe needs to evolve as well. So there are some challenges, but I think they're good growth challenges.
Yeah, wow, I love that. And that you've developed that muscle forever is such a good way to look at it. You know, if I just stick through this once, then I've got this. So I think that's amazing. Thanks for that. I'll throw to Al now. Al, what was your question? Why'd you pick it?
Sophie, yeah, I love sort of modeling other people. I was wondering if you had any sort of stories or examples of somebody who's expanded their worldview that we could model, please.
Yeah, there are lots of stories. I think that the greatest story is there's a chap I work with. He's from quite a poor part of Southeast Asia, but he has a very technical qualification. He worked hard to go to university. And he has really big aspirations, and I've been able to work with him to be unashamedly ambitious. He's very humble, culturally so, but tenacious. And to open a worldview and to build a global connection, a global community, a global network, to form connections with people globally on the matter that he really cares about in the world, and the commercial outcome that matters, and it has a social and environmental impact, a positive environmental impact. A couple of months ago, he turned 30, and just before his 30th birthday, he was pitching to the founder and the executive team of a company, a recently listed NASDAQ company. And he's absolutely the right person to be doing that. And that expanded worldview is linked with aspiration and, of course, with increased agency. And the action to reach that aspiration is unstoppable once they get going. So it's absolutely delightful to watch people like him expand their worldview and accelerate the world of possibility.
Well, thanks for that, Sophie. It's great to hear how somebody else has done it. And yeah, this is so far out of, I guess, my comfort zone, where to me, living on a farm all my life, just leaving the farm was like leaving my world. And you're getting to such another level, which is so great to hear. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, I love that, and great answer, and that's an amazing story. So thanks for that, Sophie. I've got this one from Kanika here, and this is I guess this one you covered a little bit at the top, but it's always fun to hear how people come up with sort of these ideas and concepts, which is, how did this idea come to you?
Yeah, so absolutely, it's part of my DNA to expand the worldview, and wow, what can I say? I think once we decide our attitude often, don't we? Again, as we get older and wiser, we decide, who are we? How do we want to be? And when we focus on what's working in the world, so much opens up. And so even though I took it for granted for a long time, I was desperate to get overseas and to explore and so on. This concept as I believe everyone has a superpower, and you can really harness that superpower if you surround yourself with the right people and that world of possibility to apply it. And so the idea came to me somewhat recently, actually about talking about it in this way. And so it's always an evolution, isn't it? But since it sort of dawned on me, particularly during over the last few years, what matters is we know our network, what we know, and in this changing world, let's keep updated with what we know and how we work. And they're all interlinked. And if we continue to evolve that, who we know, where are gaps in your world? If you're working in innovation and you don't have any contacts in Bangalore, one of the top 5 innovation hotspots in the world, you've got a glaring gap in your network, and that's directly going to affect what you know and how you work. So we need to level up. And if we're going to create things for the world, well, let's create them for the world. I suggest we don't create things for just a very small market, because that's also quite a risky proposition. Because if someone else sees us creating something for a mature market like Australia, where we can have high profit margins, we're exposed in this connected world. Someone's going to see that and potentially want to come in, and we're leaving value on the table by not exploring where can we take this, but also by not seeing what competitive threats are on the horizon.
Yeah, what a great way to look at it as well. And I think that's such a I love that lens. It's and I think it's a great way to look at sort of where we're heading, I guess, as well. A great lens to take going forward. So thanks so much for that. I might throw to Allegra's question here, which is, what unexpected possibilities have you seen open up for yourself and others once they've applied this worldview?
Sure. So I really think that it's the ability to cut through the noise. If you open the news, or like open a browser, web browser, or even social media, the world can be a really challenging place, and it is. Let's face it, the world really is a challenging place. But you create space by cutting out the noise and to focus on the cost and complexity. There are a lot of people in business that look at, oh, I can't grow my business internationally. It's too costly. It's too complex. The government isn't supporting this at the moment, going to this market, and that's where my network is, or that kind of thing. That can be the narrative. And I think there's a real power in creating the space when you switch off from that, because it's short term. It's all short term, even political cycles. Okay, we're going to move beyond this. And so what we can do is focus on what the world needs and not correcting what is broken, and absolutely to create long-term relationships. And so I've mentioned China. You know, my brother lives in Taiwan. No one wants to have tensions in this part of the world, but it is a reality. Europe, I've got lots of friends from Russia and Ukraine. Great people live everywhere in the world. And so let's create our relationships. And that opens up possibility, and it's a longer term play. You know, let's build relationships, and if we're going to create sustainable business models, let's create them for places that might be a little bit off limits at the moment, but they might not be, but have the transparency, the visibility to make those informed choices. And so focusing on the possibility and not being stifled by the problems, that opens up a world of opportunity. And so that can be quite an unexpected outcome for business leaders. They can power through. And isn't that a great thing to do in the world right now?
Absolutely. And it's such a good, once again, great lens to look at things through, which is that even if it's not directly relevant right now, having those relationships when things do open up gives me, you know, I'm right at the front of the queue, and I can help them out. They can help me out. So I think that's a beautiful way to look at it, and a great way to see the global market and global relationships as well. So amazing. We do have a bonus question from Danette. So I'll throw it to you, Danette. What was your bonus question, and why'd you pick it?
Good question, Jez. So my bonus question was, what can happen to you if you don't expand your worldview? And it was really for people who are, I'm a bit stuck, don't know what to do. What are the consequences if they don't expand their worldview?
Great question, and really important for people to consider. It's a choice. And so make that informed choice. And so there are two outcomes. You miss out on potentially what's happening in the world. You miss out on opportunity. So if you don't know where opportunities are, you're probably not following them. Sometimes someone will come knocking on the door, but it doesn't happen all that often, at least not in lots of people's worlds. But also there is this opportunity to de-risk and to diversify, expanding into new markets, or even just accessing top talent. If there's amazing people in the world that you might not hire on a permanent basis, but you can bring them in on a project basis. And that could have a really powerful impact on your business. And also what we can do when we might be quite tethered to the physical world, we can diversify into new services or scalable offerings that provide us with really important sustainable revenue streams, and, diversify into foreign currencies, and light touch, but high impact if in times of economic contraction and so on. So it's all about opening up possibility and making informed choices. And I think having choices in the world is one of the most important things as an individual or for a business leader. Not for the world not to be made by what's happening around you, but for you to have that aspiration and that agency yourself to create the world and to secure outcomes. And let's also remember that, as I mentioned, the startups that are told, oh no, you're too aspirational. There are absolutely, without a doubt, people in the world who are aiming for global domination. They are absolutely, unashamedly, they want to dominate globally, and technology kind of allows for certain business models for there to be a globally dominant player. Who are they? What do they mean for your business? So it's about recognizing you might have blind spots and making them less blind. Let's see what's happening. Shine a light on the world. And that's maybe a little bit of a metaphor as well. If we don't have an expanded worldview, it's kind of like getting out into the world during daytime. And what a beautiful world it is. It's absolutely stunning. But getting out at night and looking up and stargazing, if you don't get out at night, you do miss out on the universe and that really big sense of possibility. So yeah, that's something to think about.
That's also a great metaphor. I love it. The other day I walked outside and I was like, oh, look at all these gorgeous stars. Yeah, so beautiful. Awesome. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, Sophie, I feel like this has been an amazing chat. You've given us so many good things to think about. I've taken a lot of notes. And I think it's even just from the beginning, I feel like there was a shift in how I can think about these things. And so I definitely, it's a great, almost paradigm shift kind of thing, conversation for me. So this has been great, but I might go around the room and grab some final thoughts from people. So I might start with you, Grahame. Grahame, any final thoughts on today's topic of expanding your worldview or today's conversation?
Sophie, thank you. It's been fantastic. Page full of notes. I love the unashamedly, or what was the other word I heard? Unapologetically ambitious. Yeah, I love that. We probably should get you back again, because I think there's so much. If you would come back, I was thinking about some of the other sort of related ideas around things like resilience, for argument's sake, and how much harder it is for somebody to even think about lifting their head up and looking to see what else is out there when they're sort of swamped. And then also the partnering thing. Finding your tribe is a great idea and an absolute must. Yes. But how do you take the small steps early on when you're not sure, when you may not have a lot of spare time, energy, etc. Anyway, thank you. It's been fantastic. Lovely to meet you. And thanks for sharing with us today. It's been wonderful.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. And thanks for that, Grahame. That's really nice. I might go to Al now. Al, any final thoughts on today's conversation or expanding your worldview and opening up possibilities?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sophie. Just listening to you today is, I guess, reinforced, my tribe, I guess, kind of hold me back in some ways, versus I love that idea of, getting a tribe who'll go out at night and look at the stars and see what is possible and be ambitious to try new things.
Yeah.
But thank you, Sophie.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Al. That's really nice. That's nice. I'll throw to Danette. Danette, any final thoughts on today's conversation and expanding your worldview and opening up possibilities?
And I, like you, Sophie, the noise. That's why I love living in the middle of nowhere, that there's less noise. I don't watch the news and stuff like that because I know it stifles possibility. And I love the fact that what you're talking about is long-term, it's sustainable, it's connected. So it's looking for opportunity rather than disconnect, so for me, it's sort of the difference between a loved-based, really creative world and a world driven by fear. And I just love this conversation. Totally agree with Grahame. If you'll come back, we'd love to have you back. And just awesome conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd love to be back.
Amazing. And I just have to say again that something about talking about developing that muscle is really, I think that's really stuck with me. Not even just for this conversation, but in a broader sense of just living that. Once you've developed it, it's so much easier to try and tackle similar problems. And I agree with exactly what Danette just said there. Having that different lens when you're looking at something as a love-based thing, how can we both work together as opposed to what are the differences that we're going to struggle with? So I totally agree. Before we wrap up, though, do you have any final thoughts, Sophie, on expanding your worldview, today's conversation, or opening up the world of possibility?
As I said at the start, we make our world through our people-to-people interactions, and it's just been so delightful in a short space of time. We've used technology and we've learnt more about each other and we've explored some possibility, and that's what it's about. And so anyone who's listening who might be thinking, what do I do? Have a look at your LinkedIn connections and look at where they're from, map them out, and where you might have a gap or two. Find someone, and people respond really well to, hey, I'd love to know a little bit about what's going on in your part of the world, and set up a time to have a virtual coffee or tea or whatever works, and have a conversation and bring the human back to building relationships and possibility in the world. And thank you so much for having me. I've loved it.
Yeah, and that's what a great tip for anybody listening. And I agree, not only are we having this virtual conversation now, but people will be listening to it, weeks from now, months from now, maybe even years from now. And if you are, I feel like this is still going to be an extremely relevant conversation. So that's great. Now, Sophie, if someone's listened to this podcast and they've gone, love your ideas, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
they can absolutely feel free to connect on LinkedIn, and on there, I'm quite responsive. Otherwise, there's contact details on my website, which is sophiekrantz.com. Yeah, would love to connect.
Awesome, and they'll all be linked in the description of this podcast, so you can just go click on those right now. Sophie, once again, thank you so much for the conversation. To the regular team, thank you so much for being on. Great questions, great convo, and to everybody listening at home, have a magical week.